Good afternoon. My name is Kashish and I'm the product manager for IBM Pure Systems. And today I'm going to talk to you about the vision of IBM Pure Systems and where IBM is planning to take the infrastructure on this journey. So, do you want to move the slides? Thanks. So, typically what has been happening is that in today's world, business always has an aggressive ask, right? So they want IT to respond as of yesterday, because they might have new ideas, new innovations that they want to create, new supply chain systems they want to put in place to respond to, say, a competitive threat. And they have all these big business ideas, and they expect IT to respond immediately to address those business ideas, because business doesn't wait for anyone. Right? The challenge there, however, is that business doesn't really understand the reality that is there in the complexity of IT. Every 2 months or every 3 months, you have something new coming in. And IT's responsibility is to look after not only that single layer, the server layer or the storage layer, but it's the entire stack. It's an entire application that needs to be delivered. To that point, in fact, if you think about it, when the business user comes to the IT department, they expect the answer to be done in just a couple of days or maybe yesterday. But that doesn't really happen, because what happens is it takes 2 to 3 months just to figure out what to buy, what architecture to go for, what products to go with, right? And once you've decided on that, it takes another 2 to 3 months to get the best breed option for you. The best technical configuration, the best architecture, the best software, the best hardware, and of course the best price. And even after you do that, it takes another month and a half to deliver that system, to test it, to deploy it, and then once you've done that, then you've got to get the application installed. And the business doesn't understand this, yet the business wants IT to respond very quickly, right? Now, this entire thing of getting a new project just takes anywhere between 6 to 9 months. But if you think about it, only 20 to 30% of an IT manager's time goes in addressing these new deployments. 70 to 80% of the time goes in fixing problems, right? Firefighting issues, because if you want to make a change in one part of the stack, the entire IT department needs to know what's happening across. I take a simple example as a firmware upgrade. To do a firmware upgrade on the server, which just happens to be running virtual machines, it's not an easy task, right? Virtualization, while it having its own benefits, and a lot of them are good, there are complexities that get introduced in a virtualized environment that never existed in the physical environment. So what IBM did was that we went and started trying to figuring out more ways to fix this. And 3 years ago, we went back to our experts. Now, these are not just architects, right? These are people, distinguished engineers, IBM fellows who've had 20, 30 years of experience of the entire stack. Now, if you think about it, IBM invented virtualization 40 years ago, right? We invented traditional computing model, right? We have all that expertise. So, we decided and we agreed upon that you have two problems: deployment and management. And from a deployment standpoint, there may be hundreds of maybe 100 different ways of deploying an application, but maybe method number 46, for example, is the most efficient. So we will automate that. There may be 35 or 50 different ways of doing a particular task when you want to manage your infrastructure. We're going to choose number 33, which is the most efficient, and we're going to automate that, right? That's what we call built-in expertise. So these engineers came together and said, since we know IT better than anyone else, we're going to automate deployment of an application, management of an infrastructure, and put it into a system that is able to deliver that. So they came up with the idea, but now it's up to the engineer to kind of build it up. So when the engineer wanted to try and build things up together, he realized that while IBM owned the server stack and the storage stack, we did not have networking. So IBM 3 years ago went and bought a company called BNT, and hence we ended up having the networking layer as well. And we ended up with the hypervisor, which we already had experience of. So we had Power VM and KVM integrated into this. We have API-based integration with VMware and Hyper-V. So we had the hypervisor layer covered. Then you had the cloud layer. Then you had, wait for it, you have the operating systems, which are open to everybody. And then you have the middleware, which IBM has, the database, which again IBM has, the applications where we support, and then you have the security and the backup, right? So all of a sudden the engineer now had source code access to the entire stack. And if you have access to at that level, automating those tasks becomes very easy, right? So we took that built-in expertise from our experts, automated it into a system that is integrated from the ground up, and delivered a system that would give a customer a simplified experience. Because the whole idea is our IT is complicated enough. We want to simplify it and do it in the most efficient, expert possible way. And that's what expert integrated systems are about. Within the expert integrated systems portfolio, we have the IBM PureFlex and the Pure App. We have the PureFlex and the Pure Application Stack. The PureFlex is basically our infrastructure stack, and the Pure Application is infrastructure plus the app layer. To talk a little bit more on detail on that, we're going to go to this slide. If you take a look at this picture, there are essentially two kinds of workloads. We have the appliance model, right, which is like the Netezza part, which is probably 2% of the overall workloads that we have, and you have the general purpose systems. And ideally, you would want a system that is the best of both, right? That's where PureFlex and Pure Application come in. As you can see, the first stack right here, right, which is the PureFlex, consists of compute, storage, networking, the operating system, and the centralized management, right? And the cloud layer sits on top of it. That's your pure infrastructure stack. Now, what is key to note over here is that we have storage that's virtualized with our V7000. Networking, and this is one of the key features over here. The network switch within this stack is able to see the IP addresses of the virtual machine. And that fixes a lot of problems that customers face on site. Now that the network switch is virtual machine aware, you can call that network virtualization, you're able to manage a network much more properly, right? And we'll talk about that during the demo a bit. Then you have the servers that are virtualized, and now I have a centralized management console that is able to manage servers that are virtualized, storage that's virtualized, network that's virtualized. And now I've built that up into the cloud stack. Now that's my infrastructure stack, and on top of that now, on top of that flexible infrastructure, and I'll tell you why we call it flex, right? Typically the assumption that a lot of customers have is if you go for an integrated stack, it's a lock-in, that you can't connect anything from outside. In this case, no. With IBM, it's completely based on open standards. For example, based on storage virtualization, we can virtualize non-IBM storage as well and make it function under the single console. On networking, we are basing our network on open standards. So our network switches can talk to a Juniper or a Brocade or an Emulex or QLogic and have that seamless network capability at a VM level. On the server front, of course, we have x86 and power nodes, so you have an option to choose. And in the management console, we manage the entire flex system within it, right? So that's the advantage. You can pick up the infrastructure stack, you have the application stack, where you have the IBM middleware, which is WebSphere, Tivoli, or Rational Tools, and a database which is DB2, right? And you can pick and choose the stack on the application stack there. But the real expertise comes, and you remember when we talked about capabilities of our experts to give you the most efficient way of deploying an application. Now that we have the entire stack with us, we know the best way to do that. And that's where application systems, patterns of expertise come in. They think of them as templates of pre-tested, pre-deployed flex. When we put in the IBM software stack, which is, consists of Rational, DB2, our WebSphere stack, we have our development tools with Tivoli and the backup tools with Tivoli and management software there. If you take the entire stack together, it gives us the capability to address application level needs, right? Now that we have these layers, on top of these layers, what we start doing is creating these expert patterns. Now the expert patterns come back to, remember what we talk about built-in expertise, right? The expertise of IBM in order to deliver the most efficient way to deploy an application, right? And the easiest way to do it, the simplest way. That's what an expert pattern is, right? And we have various codes that we've worked with internally with IBM and with our external partners like SAP, Radware, all of them to develop these templates that can be deployed very quickly, right? So think of it this way. Imagine being able to go and deploy an enterprise class application like an SAP as quickly or as easily as you would deploy something on an Apple iPhone, where you just download the app and deploy, or an Android or a Google Store, just download the app, deploy. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. That's what our expert patterns are, where we allow you to quickly deploy applications and not worry about it. Right? And that goes back to the deployment stack. So when we started, we said that there were two problems. One was application deployment, and the other was
zoom in to IBM.
Quicker management, right? So making management easier. From an application deployment perspective, that's where the expert pattern comes into play. From a management perspective, we're going to take you through a demo and show you some of the features that allow us to very easily give a simple life to the end customer, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to our demo, and we're going to log in to a console that we call the Flex Systems Manager. The Flex Systems Manager is a centralized management console that is the one that manages server, storage, networking, hypervisor, all of that, right? And it is one of a kind because it's truly just one console, right? So it'll serve storage, networking, and the hypervisor. And what we're going to do is, the moment you enter the screen, you see that there's a chassis that you can go click on. So that if you're managing multiple chassis, you can go to that part. And as you can see, this is the Blade Center system, which we call the Flex system. Within that, it's a 10 new chassis with every system can have 14 of these servers. Now, the unique part is when you log in, the moment you log in, you get a graphical view of your current health of your system. Right? If there are any errors, you can go and see. Right up there's a compliance and problems tab. So it tells you very quickly if there are any issues. Because the idea is that if there's a problem, you want to get down to the fix very quickly. You don't want to spend time trying to figure out what you want to do. In fact, one of the things that allows us to do this very quickly is something called what we call Quick Find, right? Now, Quick Find is like a predictive text that is there. You think of it like a Google search for the enterprise, right? So it's there for the entire data center. So server, storage, networking, and the hypervisor, the system searches across the stack. Right, so if you type in updates, you get to see what are the release management parts. And it takes you directly where you want to go. It's all clickable. If you go back and type in, say, an IP address of a server or the server name, right? So you may remember that maybe BH or something else was a name. You can directly go and type in the name of the server, and it will take you to that server. You go see, so 15B is this server name. And if you have hundreds of servers in a data center, you can very quickly find it, right? Similarly, you can do that for a virtual machine, you can do it for a network switch, anything inside that entire data center. So with this, in fact, we are confident that with this simple quick find feature, we can save anybody 50% of the time because you're not spending time figuring out what to do. Right? Can you imagine life without Google? You can't, right? It's exactly what we've done here, and it searches across the entire network stack. Server stack, storage stack, and the virtualization stack, right? And one goes, so you know what you want, you can get that. It also gives you, in this graphical view, it can also allow you to see the various components where there are error alerts, and it gives you colors and all that. But what we're going to do is, I had mentioned that, amongst other things, one of the key components here is the capability of this system to recognize virtual machines, virtual servers, virtual network switches as well, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you to a console that allows you to see the physical and the virtual from the same thing, from the same console. Currently what happens is that you have different consoles for that, so that network administrator's life is actually a little bit more complicated. He has to go and apply separate properties for the physical network and separate for the virtual. And this actually causes a lot of policy issues at a customer side. What we're able to do is within the network, we are able to see, as you can see here, there are 7 virtual switches, 7 switches being seen. What you see with the second last one here is a physical switch. All the others are virtual switches, and they're virtual switches across different kinds of hypervisors. That one, these are power hypervisors. This one's KVM hypervisor, right? And you can have a VMware hypervisor. So you're able to apply the properties across the entire stack at one go, regardless of hypervisor. Which means that the amount of time and the complexity that the network administrator was facing as challenges before now gets fixed. The other advantage that we get is that now we're also able to do automation tasks. Think of it this way. Now that the network switch can see the IP address of the virtual machine, all of the previous bottlenecks that existed in a virtualized infrastructure don't exist anymore. Which means creating automation plans becomes very easy. And now you can link the automation plans to hardware alerts as well. If the system spikes on 95% consistently, initiate migration. Or if there is a server that's about to fail and we get a hardware alert, critical alert, move the VMs before the server fails. So it's like, you know, prevention is better than cure. Before the failure of a server, you move it. So what happens is that once we've, so we're saying, like in this case, migrate to VM, do what you want to do. And at the same time, you can set alerts saying this has happened. The admin can get an alert on his phone, on his iPhone, and say that, look, this past task is taking place. You want to allow it, not allow it. In other words, what we're doing is we're getting the system administrator to become a policy setter, where he goes and sets that this is how I want my system to work. When I'm at home and I'm away and things go wrong, the system automatically takes action. I don't have to worry. I will be informed of what has happened and the system will do the job. That's what simplicity meant. And that's what we meant when we were talking about built-in expertise of IBM into a system that's integrated by design, because you have to have control of all the systems to create an automation plan. And if you're able to create these plans, and in fact, we can make a lot more complicated ones as well. But once you create those things, the system starts thinking for itself based on your company's policies. And that's kind of the promise that we keep with PureFlex, right? We give you a simplified experience in the most expert possible way, without any lock-in, giving you the option of utilizing your existing legacy systems. Non-legacy, yes, there'll be some trade-offs, but at least you're not, you're justified in not wasting what you already have, and it integrates into your system.